Good evening, or good afternoon, or even good morning. It depends what time of day you're watching this, of course. We're back, finally. Sorry for the delay, once again. We had a bit of a sort of nasty January. Both my wife and I were ill pretty much all of January, and it's not really very good for going out and hanging around in cold churches, as you might imagine. But here we are. We're back out and about again, and especially for you, we're out in a completely new church. And if you have a look around, you will see it's a very new church. It's a rather modern building, huge building, with a huge acoustic. We're in Frankfurt. Now, in Germany, there are two cities called Frankfurt. One's called Frankfurt an der Oder. That's way, way, way in the east. It's almost on the Polish border. And this one, the main Frankfurt that people around the world know, this is Frankfurt am Main. And this is sort of like the financial center of Europe, especially these days with all that nonsense that's going on in London. So anyway, so we're in Frankfurt. We're south of the river. We're in a place called Frankfurt Niederrad. That's part of Frankfurt, just to the south of the river. And this wonderful church houses a rather magnificent three-manual organ, which we're going to have a look at in a minute. Check it out. A rather beautiful, shiny organ up on the organ loft, which is rather wonderful. And today we're going to start doing something that we've always wanted to do, and you've always suggested, and now we can finally do it because I had a birthday recently and I invested in one of these wireless microphone systems. So I am now completely free. I am not connected to my wife via a cable. I can move around completely freely, which is great. So I can sort of disappear over here and you can still hear what I'm doing. I can even sort of dance through the church. Now, it doesn't matter, but yes, we're free, so we can show you the church. Now, this is a rather modern church. It's incredibly high. It's got a rather wonderful sort of vaulted ceiling, which means it's got a beautiful acoustic. And the walls, as you can see, are just basically concrete, bare concrete, which gives it that rather lovely, simple, but striking acoustic. Now, you've already seen the murals in the altar at the front of the church, if you would care to turn around and have another look. All very modern, rather exciting actually. Yeah. In Frankfurt, this is called the Open Church. The sort of German title is die offene Kirche Mutter Guten Rates, which translates roughly as the Open Church, the Mother of Good Suggestions. Sounds a bit weird, but that's what it is. So this is the Open Church, and it's a very sort of mixed part of Frankfurt here. It's obviously a very culturally mixed part of Frankfurt. And of course the church is trying to be as open as possible to encourage people to come in and, have a look. And they seem to get that done rather well. So, with our newfound freedom, we shall now wander up to the organ loft and have a look at this rather interesting instrument. Just said this is the Open Church, but they've given us a key so that we can lock everything up completely. We have all our recording equipment there. And now we head up to the organ loft, which is up a huge number of stairs. And here we are. This is great, this freedom here. We can sort of play around with cuts and new scenes and films and things. But doing all these scenes in English and in German can definitely get me out of breath. I need to do some exercise. New Year's resolution for 2020, lose weight, get fit. Oh my God. And once you've strained your way up the stairs to get to the organ loft, what's better than a little living room area, as it were? It sort of almost looks like a little conservatory area where you can sit, relax, get your breath back. Maybe I could even lie down on the couch in the background and gather my strength before I sit down at the organ and play a few tunes. I quite like this. I can imagine sort of a Sunday morning service here, where the priest's up the front delivering his sermon. The organist can sort of sit back here, maybe enjoy a cup of coffee, or maybe even a glass of wine during the service. Yeah, this would be kind of cool, actually. I think I should install something like this in my place at Herschbach. What do you think? As usual, I always want to say a quick word of thanks to everyone who's been supporting us over the last few weeks and months. And I can technically say years now, because we've been doing this for just over a year, which is rather wonderful. And of course, if you haven't already, then please consider subscribing to the channel, and don't forget to ring the little bell. It's amazing what you find in organ lofts around the world, isn't it? Yeah, That's kind of cool, isn't it? So don't forget, subscribe, ring the little bell, and you'll always be kept up to date on our new organ adventures. And finally, we make it to the console of the Albiez organ here in Frankfurt, Niederrat, St. Jakobus, Kirche Mutter vom Guten Rat. That's quite a title for a church, but the organ is quite something. Listen to this. So here we have this wonderful 3-manual, 50-something stop instrument. It's quite a big one. And as you can hear in this wonderful big acoustic, it makes a rather grand sound. Those are these horizontal trumpet pipes, the chamade, or the Spanish trumpets, if you like. That gives it that sort of real, bitey sound. But yeah, all the stops to the left and right of the organist in nice rows, as you can see. And they're also controllable from this I don't know what do you call it, from this registration system. That's probably the easiest way to describe it if you don't know what an organ is or what these things are. And what that enables you to do, you can sort of save, yeah, different combinations of those stops. You're not always doing it by hand. You can sort of save them and just recall them here using these buttons. And it's called like a sequencer. You can move the sequencer backwards and forwards, if you like, to get all the different combinations of stops. It makes things much easier. Now that is electronically controlled, but the rest of the organ, in other words, when I press a key here, there's a mechanical connection behind the console here. So when I press that key, all sorts of mechanical things there happen, connected directly to the pipe where all that air is, or wind, is stored underneath the pipe. And that's, like I say, controlled mechanically. And it's actually rather easy to see in this organ how that works. So we're going to go in the organ now and have a look at the mechanics. Hope that made sense. I don't think I've ever come across an organ where there's so much room inside the organ that I can sit quite comfortably, cross-legged, and explain what's going on. Now, here we are on the other side of the console. Yeah? So that is the console. And here you can see sort of miles and miles and miles of wooden connections, all sorts of mechanical wonders, as it were, that control everything. And it's really easy to see what's going on here. And I think we'll start with these chaps here. Now, like I said, this over here is the console. And to the left and right of the keyboards were all the stops that you saw. Now, all those stops are connected to these wooden connections here, yeah? And they, as you can see, move around, or I can move them around with my hand. Now over there, when I pull on a stop, yeah, it pulls this in this direction. That pulls on a little pulley thing, which is attached to a pole that goes all the way up into the height of the organ, somewhere there. Yeah, and it turns that pole, and at the top of that pole, there's another connection that pulls on, shall we say, a strip. Probably a metal strip. I haven't been up there to have a look yet. And underneath the pipes, there are all sorts of holes bored into this sliding piece of wood or metal. It's called a slider, funnily enough, and it slides in and out. So when the stop is off, yeah, the little holes move away from where the pipes are. So if I press a key, no wind can get into the pipes. But when the stop is on, all those little holes are aligned with the pipes now. So when I press a key on one of the manuals, a valve opens, and wind gets into the pipes. It's really rather simple, although at the same time it's actually very, very complicated. Now, this is a modern organ, but exactly this style of sort of mechanical gubbins has been going on since the beginning of organ building, which is basically almost 1,000 years old now. Think about that, yeah? This kind of complexity was around, or has been around for hundreds of years. And obviously, it's never been bettered, which is why they're still doing it like this. In mechanical organs, at least. So here we are, right behind the console now. So we've looked at the stop mechanisms. Now we're going to look at the key mechanisms. Now this here, this rather complicated looking batch of woodwork here, this is what controls the key action. And we have 3 manuals on the organ. These are the keys. These are the back end of the key. So if you imagine the key being about that long altogether, so the bit you see at the console is only this long, the rest of it goes here behind the console to this yeah? And it's basically a sort of a hinged mechanism, yeah? So I press the key at the front and the back rises. So when the back rises, like this here, yeah, it pulls on one of these wooden attachments here, as it were, yeah? And these are called trackers. This is a tracker organ. You may have heard that before. And what it means is that these wooden trackers control the mechanism between the key and the pipe. Now the pipes are over my head at the moment. So how does the sound, or how does the mechanism work? Because the keys are here, the pipes are miles away up there. Well, it's quite simple. There's a tracker that comes from the pipe down into the belly of the organ. Down there's another one of those sort of poles, like a roller, as it were, and that is connected there. That transforms that vertical mechanism into a horizontal mechanism under me at the moment, and that sort of goes in here. And as you can see, that transforms into this vertical motion again. Now I don't know if we can, is this working? Can we see that moving? Yes, there, see? This is the same pipe. It's moving that tracker there, which is now pulling down on a mechanism. So there's another roller up there that transforms it into another horizontal movement, which then is underneath the pipe and pulls on a valve that lets that pipe speak. And if that stop is open, remember we've got this here, if that stop is then open, it sounds. Does that make sense? So I can show you this with the upper manual, because I've opened a stop in the upper manual. Yeah, there it is working. And it's absolutely direct. Press the key and at exactly the same time, because it's all perfectly balanced, we get a sound from the pipe. Amazing, really, when you think about it. Now, if you imagine that you then couple all of those there are 3 manuals there. So if I couple them all together, then I've got the weight of 3 mechanisms at the same time to play. That could get quite heavy. Now, this is all beautifully set up and beautifully balanced. It's incredibly light to play, but when you couple everything together, it's obviously 3 times heavier. 3 manuals, couple them all together, you've got to move 3 trackers at the same time for each note. Does that make sense? Not on this organ. It's not mechanically controlled. You can see here above the keys for the upper manual, there are these electric contacts. The couplers of this organ are electric. So that's it's like an electronic assistance. It's like steering on a modern car. That's all electronically controlled, yeah? Very, very clever. So that takes away the weight, as it were. So when you play on the great manual with everything coupled together, it's exactly as heavy as if you're just playing on the great manual on its own. Quite clever, thanks to this electronic assistance. So although we've got all this wonderful mechanics around us, like the organ world has had for hundreds of years, we're using some modern technology to make it a little easier. So in other words, we've got the crisp, perfect playing feel of a mechanical organ with the assistance of a modern electronic organ. I hope that makes sense. It's quite difficult when you think about it, and it is incredibly difficult when you look at it like this, but at the same time, it's actually rather simple engineering. So we've climbed up another ladder and arrived up where the pipes are. So to your left, you can see the stops of the great division. We'll have a look at them in a minute. But on my left, to your right, you can see this this transposing mechanism that I told you about. I don't mean musical transposing, I mean mechanical transposition. So here are the trackers coming up to this level. These are the trackers for the swell division. And they come up to here, yeah? And you can see this very cleverly. So when I press the key, it lifts that one up, pulls on that one that goes over there, that pulls this one down, which then pulls this one down. As you can see, that then goes all the way up to the valves right underneath the pipes and lets them sound. So it takes the trackers are all next to each other because the keys are next to each other, but obviously the pipes aren't all that close to each other. They are this far apart, yeah, quite far apart. So that has to be spread out to the distance of the pipes, as it were, and that's what these chaps here are for. Now, as I said, here we have the stops for the great division. So here we have the mixture, a 3 or 4 rank mixture, as you can see. Is it 3 or 4? It's a 3 rank mixture. That's probably, that might be the cornet, I'm not terribly sure. We'll have a look when we get back down exactly what that is. Although that might be the cornet up there, not very sure. But here's the trumpet, and then all the other different pipes that belong to the great division on the different levels themselves. Here's the bigger ones here, and the tiny little ones, or different ones, as you can see, are in there on a level of their own. And then at the front, those are the prospect pipes that you see from the body of the church. It's all rather fascinating, isn't it? And like I say, there's tons of room here in this organ. It's great, so you can see everything working. And if you follow me, you can see on this side, the side of the organ, as it were, on the other side is exactly the same. These are the pedal pipes. So they're split between left and right of the organ. There's that stereo effect we've talked about before in other videos. And it's the same thing here in the great division. Here are the large pipes of one side, and opposite us, where we just were, are the other large pipes from the other side. So we have the C and the C sharp. Or is it the other way around? It's probably the other way around. Yes, this is the C side, and that's the C sharp side. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay, shall we go up and have another look? And if you climb up another ladder, you get to this level of the organ, and this is where the swell box is. Now, we've talked about swell boxes in other videos before. What it basically means is there's a sort of a box full of pipes, like we saw there, but it's completely enclosed. Yeah, the pipes are sort of blocked away, as it were, and here at the front you can open up these louvers, as it were. That's controlled with a pedal down at the console. You can open and close that, and that controls the volume of the pipes inside the box. You can swell the sound, swell up, swell down, or swell open and swell close. And if you look through these little louvers here, you can actually see the pipes of the swell division. While I'm up here at the swell division, I've just taken the camera into my own hands. So apologies for the camera movements here. My wife does this much better than I do, but from up here you can see just how sort of three-dimensional the organ is. Now, I'm up at the swell division, way up above the great pipes. Now, these are the great pipes that we just showed you down below. Look how far up we are, much higher we are now. Yeah, and you can really see how three-dimensional this all is. It's exceptionally fascinating, I think. And you can see through the prospect pipes there, see that? You can see the church down below, so we're really, really high up above the church. It's a rather wonderful feeling up here. Please excuse my camera work. I think I'll give the camera back to the missus. She does this much better than I do. So back at the console, let's have a quick look at all these magnificent stops, and it's actually a very clever system here. I like the way it's laid out. We've got the swell division at the top. Those are the pipes we just looked at, right at the top of the organ with the louvers at the front, and I control these with this pedal here, which is rather clever. Then we have the great division. Those are the pipes you saw in the middle that we looked at first. And then here, the bottom manual is called the Rückpositiv, a choir in some organs, and those pipes are behind me. See those little three towers just there? All the pipes for the choir division, for the positive division, are behind the organist. Rückpositiv, positive behind the organist. Rück is the back, okay? So behind. So, all these stops here are perfectly laid out. It's rather cleverly done. In rows. This is great. So here, for the great division, here are my stops for the great. I have all my principal sounds, my diapason sounds, in one row here. So 16, 8, 4, 2. There's a quint in the middle, and I have a mixture. So it's all here in one row. Perfect. So if you want to play your Bach prelude in G, you just pull out the stops and off you go. Perfect. What if I only want some fluty sounds? Well, here I have my fluty sound. In the next row over, I have a stopped flute. Or I have a slightly more open flute, a Spitzflöte. Obviously, I have a 4-foot, and I also have a 2-foot flute. Kind of cute. I then have a solo stop. That's this cornet. It's a 5-rank mixture. Sort of gives it a sort of trumpety solo sound. Useful for French Baroque, French classical music. Off we go. And out here I have my trumpet, my reed stops. I have my trumpet. Or these horizontal trumpets right above my wife's head at the moment. And when I play them, it makes her deaf. You're hearing that from the recording, which is taking place down in the church, but up here at the console, that is literally right in your ear. It's incredibly loud. So those are the great stops. Now the same thing here in the pedal while we're on this side. I have my my principal sounds, my diapason sounds, so 16, 8, 4, and even 2, and then a mixture, all just there. fluty sounds. I have a 16, 8, and 4. And I have a couple of sort of special things here. There's what's called a Groß-Sesquialter. That's like a little solo thing that gives a bit of a fruity sound. I suppose you could use that as a solo stop. Or maybe not. Sort of giving a a soft sort of fagot sound, like a bassoon, that kind of sound, quite clever. And then there's this thing in the middle, a quint bass, a quint bass, 10 2/3. Now this is a sort of a money-saving idea that features in some organs. When you don't have a 32 foot, what's a 32 foot? Well, if I take this 16 foot, it's a very low sound. Imagine I want something that sounds an octave lower than that, bumbling away. That would be a 32 foot stop. Now, in order to save money, imagine how big a 32 foot pipe is. That's like 10 meters, yeah? That's really big. Obviously costs a lot of money. So some organ builders cheat and use a harmonic effect. And that harmonic effect is basically, if I play a note there, and I play the fifth above that note, can't really hear it here, maybe you can hear it in the recording, but it sort of gives the effect of the octave lower sounding at the same time. So if I have my 16 foot stops and this quint bass on at the same time, I've got a 32 foot effect without having the cost of a real 32 foot. That's clever, isn't it? And of course down here I have some reeds, some pedal reeds, so let's bump up the pedal a bit. Big snarly pedal reeds, and with that 32 foot effect there, it sounds almost sort of French romantic. Now, if you come over to the other side with me, we can have a look at the other stops. So we have the stops for the swell division over here, that's the top keyboard, and again, they're sort of arranged in choruses. So here I have, with a rather French-sounding mixture, which is rather cool. Now here I have my string sounds. Which are very gentle and rather luscious actually. Then I have my fluty sounds. Couple of in-between stops, as I like to call them, so a fifth and a third, we won't bother with them just now. And out here again I have my reed sound, so we have 16, 8 and 4 foot reeds. That's giving it a big sort of snarly French romantic sound. There's that lovely acoustic again. They're rather wonderful just on their own. And then I have an oboe stop, which is for sort of solos. Rather lovely little sound, pretty good, eh? And then here on my rook positive, again, in rows, so I would have my principal chorus, my softer principal chorus. My fluty sounds. And again, a couple of solo-y features. I also have a reed stop, which is a Krummhorn, which can often be a rather sort of nasal sounding thing, especially on neo-Baroque organs. This one actually sounds more round, almost like a clarinet. Pretty cool, isn't it? And of course you can then feature everything together, pretty much, all the loud stuff together, by pressing this little button here with my right foot. Sometimes it's a button here for the fingers, sometimes it's a toe piston. In this organ it's a toe piston that says tutti. I press it and we have the lot. And that wonderful acoustic in the church. Not bad. I hope you have enjoyed our little introduction to this wonderful Albiez organ here in Frankfurt, Rat, St. Jakobus, St. Jacob, Mutter from Guten Rat, Mother with the good suggestions. I have no idea how you would properly translate that, but let's leave it at that for now. It sounds rather amusing. If you're ever in the area, come and visit this church. It's rather beautiful, actually. It's very sort of simple. I like the bare concrete style and the huge acoustic, and this wonderful organ, of course. This organ really doesn't get much press, which is a bit of a shame. We're on the south side of the river here, yeah? Most of the sort of cultural stuff in Frankfurt takes place in the middle of Frankfurt city, where all the skyscrapers are and all the money is, basically. And that's a shame, because this is a rather wonderful instrument. It has been featured in a recording. So the entire organ works of Max Reger were recorded here on this organ. Wonderful recording. It features regularly on radio over here in Germany. I'm not sure if it's that international, but have a look, you'll probably find it. It's definitely worth listening to, and if you're ever in the area, it's definitely worth coming to visit the church and the organ. You can, however, also help out a little bit. Now, a big thank you to Manuel Braun, who's the organist here. He's also organist in another church in Frankfurt, which we're going to be visiting in a few weeks' time, which is a completely different instrument, rather beautiful, apparently. I don't know it yet, but we're going to be visiting that in a couple of weeks' time. But big thanks to Manuel for letting us spend some time here in the church this afternoon at the organ. There's a thing going on at the moment. The organ's been in the church since the 80s. And this church, or this part of Frankfurt, very close to Frankfurt Airport, which is, of course, one of the busiest airports in the world. And a lot of the dirt, basically, that sort of flies around the air from here, gathers in big buildings. And it likes to gather in corners of buildings. And, of course, an organ is in the corner of the building. So over the years, the organ has gathered rather a lot of dirt. And in there, it's pretty filthy. It didn't look like it when we were in there, but it is. When I came out of the organ, I actually had to wash my hands. They were black with dirt and dust. Now, that's basically pollution. So the organ is being polluted, and the organ is in desperate need of a cleaning. And I just got my wife laughing when we did the German version, because I said the organ basically needs a bath. Yeah, it's absolutely filthy. And every part of the organ gets removed, it gets cleaned individually, not only the pipes, but all the woodwork, everything. Everything gets taken out, cleaned, put back in, and that costs an absolute fortune. And the church is sort of saving up for that at the moment, and there's a SMS sort of donation thing going at the moment. Now, I don't know if it works internationally, but I'm going to mention it anyway. Down in the description below, there will probably be a link. Manuel wanted to send me something. I must check that I've got it. Or I'll post a picture of the poster for that. There's sort of a little poster thing going on at the moment where you can donate towards the cleaning of this instrument. And I think it would definitely be worth it, because the organ would then sound even brighter than it sounds now, which would be rather wonderful. So yeah, if you want to help out, please do. So once again, thanks to Manuel for letting us have some time in the church this afternoon at this wonderful instrument. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have, and we'll see you next time back at another organ. Here's a piece of music. Bye-bye.